Hello, everybody, and welcome to This Week in X, presented by Crushing Comics. We are here today to talk about Cable, issue number 10, out on the 28th of April, 2021. I'm here to talk about it with my two friends, Tyler and Fariha, and we have a warning for you. It's our standard spoilers warning. We're going to get into every detail of this issue. That's the point. But we're also going to talk about details of other X-Men books, as well as the Marvel Universe. So you have been warned. This is a full spoilers discussion. For Cable number 10, Tyler, let's begin with you with our first reactions before we get into the details of the issue.
So even though this issue reads pretty fast, I think it still packs enough stuff and humor to make me not feel unsatisfied. So I think Nodo is still pretty on point in the art department, and that last twist was especially sweet. So I give it a 3.75 possums out of 5.
Fariha?
So last issue, when it ended with Cable and Hope, and since then, I actually went on and read a lot of Cable and Hope, and I was hoping that there will be more hope in this issue. And there wasn't. So I was a little disappointed by that. But at the same time, like Tyler said, there was a lot of humor and a lot more, since we've seen it in Sword last week, a lot more, advancement of X of Swords issues, or that era, that saga or whatever you want to call it, that it's like kind of getting seeped into other places. So I really enjoyed that. In terms of art, I do want to enjoy Phil Noto's art, but I cannot get over how every face looks the same because, that Emma looks like blonde Natasha Romanoff. So that really annoyed me. But otherwise, I would say I enjoyed it, and I'm sad that it's coming to an end. It feels like it's coming to an end. So, not necessarily, I could have done without this issue.
I had a very opposite reaction to that. I feel the way on this that I feel on like a long running indie series like Saga or Birthright that I love, where I just want to see this team handle these characters forever. Part of the fun of an indie series, it's like, you're always going to get the same writer, you're always going to get the same artist, and you really love how it's their characters. You don't want to see anybody else's take on them. And that's kind of how I feel about this right now. Like, I don't want to see anybody other than Dugan write Cable. I really like Dugan's Emma. I love Dugan Scott, and luckily we're going to get Dugan writing a lot of them because Scott's going to be in his new X-Men book. He is writing Emma and Marauders. But the idea that this could end and is ending, and the idea that we might lose young Table, it's kind of upsetting to me, as I've said a few times recently. And I love Noto's art. I'm sorry, I'm just an easy mark for it. I know there's some sameness in the faces, but again, because we've had so many issues in a row of him here, I've kind of settled on that this is the Emma face. Even if the nose is a little bit wrong, even if it looks like his Natasha, when I see this Emma, I'm like, oh, it's Emma. And so I just think I've really settled into like a place that you get to on an uninterrupted run that we don't often get on Marvel and DC anymore, because we don't get a lot of continuity. Everything's got to shake constantly. And part of what Krakoa has given to us is the ability to like not shake things up as much and actually let runs be runs. And it's a really great feeling. It's a nice feeling. It's the feeling that I remember from the 90s of liking books where you could just like a book. Things are escalating and changing here, even if the art team has not changed, because young Cable here has become really fixated that he needs the old guy, and his opens up with he's going to gas Xavier to steal Cerebro to use it to find the old guy, which is kind of weird to me because he's almost definitely not in this time and place. But I guess he's going to start bopping around through time and using Cerebro, and he's stopped by Emma, who's just out for a night walk in the Krakoan jungle with her flask, as one does. Although clearly she's there to stop Cable, but she gives the appearance that she's just out for a walk with her flask. And it's a fun exchange, and it leads Emma to be like, you have this dad who's like the most professional X-Men there is. Why are you trying to shoulder all of this burden yourself? Which is kind of funny because it's exactly what his dad would do. So, Fariha, what did you think about this initial encounter with Emma here in the jungles of Krakoa?
So, and this is where I was talking about the art and everything, because the thing is the way she dressed it. I'm like, oh, what is Natasha doing here in Krakoa? Because of the dress and then the face and then everything. Because, Noto also drew like one of Black Widow's run. So that's where I was tripping out. Oh, then it's like, oh no, it's Emma. The thing is, isn't he trying to get like Professor X's Cerebro to raise old Cable. That's
does he already wants it back to raise him? It's not just find him. Yeah.
Yeah,
okay.
because I think and that's one of the reasons I'm like, ooh, is Hope is giving him this idea? But that was the whole point that he was trying to kind of get that. I like the interaction, and I like that Emma's just drinking at night out of a flask, which kind of gave a lot, tells a lot about her. But yeah, I mean, it was fun interaction, but I didn't feel the same depth I felt last issue.
Tyler?
I mean, it is true that sometimes it is easier to talk to an aunt compared to your own mom, which is what I attribute here, because he's like, Emma is like, okay, tell me what's happening. And he's like, okay, read my mind. Whereas he could have gone to Jean and told Jean the entire thing, but he did not. So I thought that was kind of nice and sort of like a nice counterpoint to how Phoebe was calling out to Jean in X-Force instead of Emma. And then do you really think that Emma was there to stop Cable?
Yes. Why else would she be walking around in the woods at night?
She's spying on Professor X.
X.
Oh, you think she has minions to do that? She doesn't need to. She doesn't need to stand in the jungle in her white pantsuit.
No, the only thing that was throwing me away from that theory was like she's in white. Because if she's in her black costume, then I was like, she's just spying on Professor X.
No, and we also seen that Professor X takes off the helmet when he's sleeping. So it's very possible that that's why he was there. One thing I do like, though, is like the whole conversation about Apocalypse, that why Apocalypse did it. And then it's like, in order to make us fit. I'm like, there's better way. There's better way of doing that. I don't buy it.
Well, and there's an interesting line that the X-Writers have to kind of tread in referring to past Apocalypse stories now, because he's like he's not only on the island, but he's like their friend, sort of. He's their work colleague now.
Yeah.
And so you can't just play this like he was trying to make us evolve. Now it's like benevolent in some way. He was just trying to make you better when he infected you with the techno-organic virus as a baby and you had to be sent to the future to grow up in a dystopia. Yeah. He was just looking out for you. So it's like, it did feel a little discordant. Emma, of all people, who's usually keeping it real. But I feel like Emma's version of keeping it real is kind of like, it doesn't really matter what his motivation was. This is what we got out of it. That's the way Emma, I feel like, would look at it. And so she's like, look, the thing we got out of it is he was a whetstone for us to be honed upon. It kind of doesn't matter if he was evil or not, because that's what happened. And that's like a very Emma kind of like, it happened, deal with it approach to life.
Well, I thought like Fariha would react to another line instead of the Apocalypse line.
The family, like you come from the best
great
family.
Captain of Krakow.
Ugh. Like my reaction was
I wrote there say Q I roll Fariha.
I genuinely eye rolled when I read them. Magic is better.
Yeah, but talking about humor, right? That beat about Professor X coming out from his tree and it's like, hello.
Yeah, and it's called House of X. I was like, whoa. Yeah,
right, because on the map there's a House of X and a House of M, if I recall correctly.
Yeah,
right.
There's House of X.
Your divorced parents living next door to each other in two separate row homes.
Yeah, but they make sure they have matching clothes going to the gala. So, which leads to our next scene.
Well, that does lead us into our next scene, which is a brief one, but it's funny. It's where Cable runs into his dad, and his dad, Cyclops, is getting fitted for the Hellfire Gala, and he mentions that he doesn't need to see the gala design from Jumbo Carnation, which maybe explains the outfit that he wound up with. As long as the visor works, and Jumbo Carnation definitely gave him a lot of visor to work with. So I think it explains. I love that we're getting story reasons for the outfits, some of which are good and some of which are not so good, because he doesn't want to see it as long as there's a lot of visor. Tick, tick. But this launches. Go ahead, Tyler.
No, I say like anyone of importance, the tailor goes to him. He doesn't go to the shop.
Right. He gets an in-house visit.
This happens in a summer house because you see the earth, the window with the earth. So I thought it was funny.
And this starts a very classic dad versus teenage existential crisis conversation, where clearly they're talking past each other. It's a very well-worn trope, but they're doing it as Cyclops is like, we can have this conversation on the go because Emma has sent us to London to take care of these 2 stray Arrakans. I had to laugh at that because like Emma's the one who sent him to talk to Cyclops anyway. So it kind of just feels like a total setup by Emma. Like, did Emma send the Arrakans to London, or does Emma know they're only going to be honest with each other if they're doing it while fighting? Like, this is some real subtle therapy from Emma on the part of these 2 guys that she's keeping an eye out on. And so they wind up going to London and thrashing some Arrakans while they have this conflicted conversation. Tyler, what did you think about that?
Well, even before that, there's one panel that I kind of really enjoy, which is the one where Jumbo Carnation was saying, you need to come for a fitting Cable, or you risk looking a fool. And you look at Cable's face when
he got the fool as the card, right? During X of Swords, that was his card.
And his face was like, seriously? I mean, and also already he's sort of like insecure about his own ability. And then, you have to have someone like Jumbo say, oh, you're going to look like a fool. And he's like, huh? So I thought that was
Jumbo
a great...
saying that.
Yeah, so that was a really great, I think, art on that front. But I mean, it was fun. I mean, I like to, after X of Swords, when Arakko came back to this plane of existence, we barely touched on them, besides the rejection of the flowers by Iskar. So and then so it's nice to see other Arakis like basically wreaking havoc. It's nice to mention it, right? Like they are going to have a hard time fitting in. That's for sure. I mean, they have been at war for like how many hundreds of years. And then the other thing that I just noticed, nothing to do with the Araki, is that Cable is wearing a version of Scott's uniform with like different colors and a slightly different stripes here and there, but the general shapes is almost the same. So I was like, oh wow, that's really nice. Yeah, but I mean, I enjoy this part. It's a nice break. And it has a huge pay. I mean, it has a very nice payoff at the end. So yeah.
Fariha, what did you think about it?
I'm enjoying this. Like slowly, Arakis are becoming part of the X-Men narrative. So when they say that, oh yeah, these are Arakans, that like Arakis that are just going there and wreaking havoc, and they're trying to learn the heritage or learn the words and everything. And it's also kind of saying that they went and chose England, which is a country that has been at war forever, or colonizing, or they are also kind of in the same mentality, and look where they are now. And they're kind of like, Arakas are coming from kind of like a same high, let's just say. But yeah, I think it was a good, I thought the same as like, that it's like from Emma that, oh, the only way they were going to talk if they're fighting, or they're trying to solve a problem. So, I thought it was pretty nice.
There are a couple things about it that stuck out to me. One is that, like, are we to believe these are the first 2 Arakans that have taken a road trip? I mean, there's what, like millions, 5 million of them, some amount of millions. Yeah. And so they clearly can come and go if they want to. Even if they haven't planted a flower on Arakan soil, they can just come to Krakoa and go. And so it's kind of like makes you really think about, well, how many other ones are out in the world? And like, this is pretty benign. They just want to drink, right? It almost reminds me of, it's in the 180s of X-Men when they get back from Secret Wars and Juggernaut's in the pub and he's in the same pub as Wolverine.
That's my favorite issue because of the breakup.
Yeah, because it breaks up Colossus and Kitty. Yeah. Yeah. And it kind of just reminds, it's a very classic nod, but it also made me think of like, well, where are the other 500 some million Arakans? So that stuck out to me. And the other thing that stuck out to me is Noto does a couple of very cute things in art. It was an easy fight to follow. I enjoyed it. I liked when they used their powers. The impact was felt not only in the panels, but also in the shape of the panels. When Cyclops fires really hard, the panels go a little bit askew. When Cable gets knocked backwards, the panel is crooked and it kind of knocks into the panel underneath of it. People often accuse Noto of being a very static artist. And I was like, yeah, his characters can feel a little static, but he knows what he's doing with layout. And also the fight choreography was was very easy to follow for me, which is a bugbear of mine usually when fights get hard to follow. But I kept coming back to this idea that like Cyclops, has become this disconnected dad who I'm slowly transforming to in my actual life, where he thinks the conflict is all about the election. Like, oh, you're worried about getting elected. And it's actually Cable like having this existential crisis of like, no, I'm not even sure I should exist. I don't even think there's a reason for me to be in this world, which is like such a funny mutant take on like a real teenage conversation where a teenager is like having this existential crisis of like, what is the point of it all? Why should I go get a job and grow up? I don't even know what I should be doing with my life. And the father's like, oh, you're running for student council? It's just like, it just really, really got me that it's like a very real kind of moment. And not just that that's exclusive to dads, moms too, like people just who are like, think they're plugged into their kids and are plugged into the emotional level of their kids, but like haven't quite got to the motivational part of it yet, which I just thought was really charming.
I mean, if you're talking about like parents completely being out of the loop about kids' life, I think Asian kids can talk about that in depth. Like, even as an adult, like, some of the things that my mom, she's very invested about me finding a partner. And no matter how many different ways I say that, that's not necessarily my priorities at this point. And she's like, you should just go out on date more. I mean, what is COVID even? Just text. You kids text all the time. Just text people. Like, So yeah. So if you like, that part really like made me laugh when he's like, oh, it's about the election. I'm like, oh, Cyclops.
I feel like all the Arrakans that we've seen so far have looked more different. So to me, it almost reminded me of like the villains that are in Children of the Atom. That's my one knock on Noto here. Like, why did they look so X-Men-y? Like all of the other Arrakans, not that everybody's got to have some like exposed flaming heart in their ribcage or whatever, but they've all been pretty distinct design-wise. And these just kind of feel like mutants from Extras casting #2. And it didn't really, I actually liked, especially the pink one's design, I think was pretty cool. But I just, I don't know if it really hit the mark for me based on the other Arakan designs that we've seen.
Well, maybe they're just dressed to fit in.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was saying. Like maybe they're just dressed to fit in. This is like they went to a Krakoa. Like, oh, this is how these people dress. Okay. And then they went to the world thinking that that's how everyone in this world dresses. That's how I took it.
Well, and it ends in an interesting way because Cyclops basically gives this very dad statement at the end as they're having their resolution of the conflict, and he says, "Son, over my dead body will we resurrect the old man. His day is done. The future belongs to you." Smash cut to a data page, which I actually really appreciated because it's a data page that's kind of catching us up on things the characters cannot possibly know. And I think it would have been drudgerous to get this in little drips all along. I like that it was like, meanwhile, you have to think of what would happen when Cable gets killed that maybe the younger version of himself didn't think through. Cable has contingency for his body, contingencies for his artificial intelligence, contingencies for his safe house. And like young Cable, although he's still Cable, he has not the decades of experience to have thought through all of these things. And it's a really interesting comment of like, young you is not the same as you. Like old Cable still had thoughts that young Cable didn't. And it's going to create some difficulties both for him and for Strife because Cable kind of anticipated all sorts of possible problems to the extent that at one point Cable's AI and everything assumes that young Cable must have been Strife, which many readers have as well. Although I think it spells it out pretty definitively in this issue that he is not young Strife. Yeah. He is absolutely young Cable. Tyler, what did you think about this with many nods to many 90s issues of X Factor and Cable along the way?
I mean, I loved it because it's kind of like, you can completely skip this part and the issue will still work for you. Right. But this is a really nice nod to fans of the 90s comics. And also, like to people who's like, oh, I mean, it becomes, it's trying to differentiate Teen Cable with the original old Cable. Right. So this clearly differentiates the two. So basically, this data page says that, hey, this is a young Cable, which is not very experienced. And then, compared to this old one, which is a lot more experienced. We have been shown that, but here it clearly says that they are two separate people. This one has not grown up to that person. and as we can see later, may not grow up to the same person. So I thought this was quite a nice way of doing that. And if I did not know that the series is getting cancelled at issue 12, I would have thought that, so these things are coming into play later on in the run. Say, maybe he would discover, the which was the one, Greymaken Station, and then maybe he has, or maybe that's why he's on the Sword Station. He's trying to look for his old station that is like hidden from sight or something like that. So I thought that opens up quite a bit of things for Dugan to play with if we did not know that 12 is the last issue.
Freya, what about you? Did this data page resonate much for you?
So is the series getting cancelled or just ending?
Well, I mean, everybody likes to make up their own version, right?
Okay.
Ending at 12, is that canceled? I mean, I think it seems like there's a planned end that they're driving to, but then you have to ask the question, well, if this was selling as much as Batman, would they still end it at 12, or would they just find a way to like spin the next story into happening in Cable? And we'll never know.
Okay. No, I mean, in terms of like the data page and stuff like that, this is one of the things I appreciate Dugan a lot, because even if someone who haven't read all of these things, I still got information out of it.
Yeah.
I still understood that, hey, this is like, to what Peter was saying, to kind of differentiate that the old table may not have thought this through. Like, or there's like all these other things that are going on that he's not aware of. And like, it's like a very concise thing. And I'm pretty sure if this was more than 12, this wouldn't be a data page. This would have been a whole issue on its own. So, I mean, I thought that it was pretty, like, he brought all this history together in a very nice way.
Well, and it leads us to our traditional final scene with Old Man Cable that we've been getting in almost every issue. And here it reveals something interesting, which is he absolutely has the light of Galador with him, which kind of makes it feel like he's the old version of our young Cable, because Cable's never had this sword before. Yeah. He's had a psychic spear and all manner of other weapons, but this sword is very specific to this run of Cable. And it also, for me, really seemed to confirm that he's in limbo, personally. Because I've been reading a lot of comics with Limbo, and just like the demons and the way he wants to talk to the big guy, it kind of reminds me of the lead up to the original Inferno, which of course dovetails very well with, but he can't be in present day Limbo, or Magic would know, because as Tyler just mimed, Magic just visited Limbo with Cable in the last issue to ask her captives if they knew where Cable was, and they said no. So Freya, what did you think about this whole, is this old Cable of young Cable? What is the significance of the sword? Where is he? Did you get any new hints from this brief sequence?
Other than this is the old version of of Table, because that's when I was like, oh, it was him all along.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the only thing I got out of it. So, I mean, and then I was like, oh, maybe he already have, maybe something else. I was like, oh, okay. I'm like, Tyler and Peter will tell me.
Tyler, what about you?
Well, I mean, this definitely confirms that all the old Cable shots that we have seen is the future Cable from this young Cable.
Future Table.
Yeah, so it's the future young.
Seems to
Cable,
bode well for my love of young Table, that he's going to remain around since he grows to this ripe old age.
Definitely, and I mean, to add to that, this Cable learns the tricks that from the fight that he just had. Playing possum.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so this basically just like it's such a nice trick, and it's such a it's a good payoff in a sense, right? Because it's like, okay, we have been thinking, okay, maybe this is the Cable that is not that has been time traveling somewhere in between, before his death, and then we can bring him back or whatever. But no, this is Table. Which, like Peter said, I mean, I'm happy that he's not going anywhere.
I'm calling it that, one of the X-Men arc is going to be about this Table, this old Table.
Could be.
Well, especially it's all the little mini Dugganverse inside the Hicksman verse, right? Like he's playing with some very specific themes across books here about father and son with Cyclops, and Cyclops wants Cable to join the new team and put himself up for vote. Clearly, that's not going to happen. This ends right after the gala. It kind of makes you think that the solicits are maybe not telling us the whole story quite yet of where we're going to see young Table pop up, and so I'm very interested to see what transpires there. That's it.
And he also entered Deadpool, sly ways. Like Deadpool also helped.
Well, we did say last episode, I think, that we do fully expect to see Deadpool pop up before the end of the series.
Yeah, I was like, whoa, where's Deadpool?
Deadpool actually pops up in another Dugan's title, right? Which is in Savage Avengers.
Right.
And
he just can't keep away, even after a 4 or 5 year run on Deadpool. I mean, he's probably my favorite Deadpool writer, so I'm not complaining. But he can't quite keep his hands off him.
Yeah, and then Deadpool is also about a father-son in a way. We can talk about it another time. But yeah, so the thing is, I'm like, Duganverse. Let's bring it on.
Well, that is all we have to say about Cable number 10. If you've enjoyed this conversation, we talk about every X book every week. You just have to look elsewhere on the channel for it. And the reason we do that and get together is why, Fariha?
X-Men is better when it's read together.
That's right. So even an issue that we had some disparate feelings, some feel-good feelings, some slight boredom feelings, it's a lot more fun to discuss it together than it is to just contemplate it apart. So we hope that you get that same feeling of fun and togetherness from reading along with us. And until we see you next time on This Week in X, this has been Crisis with a K. And on behalf of myself, Fariha, and Tyler, thanks so much for watching, and please be well.
Bye.